Hey, listen, I hope you enjoy this episode of the Antisocial Podcast. I understand you're probably wondering whose voice this is. So, hello, my name's JB, and I love to write big, heavy riffs with big power metal choruses, and I call it Fierce Deity, which, after you're done here, I invite you to check out. Which you can do by finding me all over social media at Fierce Deity Band, or simply head to fiercedeityband.com. Anyway, enjoy the show.
Hey, well, it's 2021 and it is all about New Year's resolutions. And the New Year's resolution that I know that you've all been thinking about and you're hoping to do is to join me on Patreon. Patreon.com/Andy Dowling. It's the place to go. It is the number one way to support this podcast. And support starts from only $1 a month. Dirt cheap. Set and forget. You won't even notice it. Just comes out of your account at the beginning of the month or the end of the month or however the fuck it works. And it's just the best way to support this podcast. And if you want to get access to the exclusive Patreon podcast episode that comes out every Tuesday morning, Sydney time at 6 a.m., which includes a little bit of karaoke and some stories and some jibber jabber from your mate Andy, then there are additional tiers there to get access to that podcast episode. But patreon.com/Andy Dowling, it is a game changer for me. It's helped me ramp this podcast up. We are just firing on all cylinders, and it's all thanks to the people that are getting behind me on Patreon. Go and check it out, patreon.com/Andy Dowling. Hey, welcome to the Antisocial Podcast, episode 259. I had to think about that one. And this week's guest is Dan Cleary. Dan is the frontman from Canadian metal band Striker. They've been around for a few years now. Their last full-length album came out in 2018 called Play to Win. They also had a live studio album that came out last year called Alive in the Studio in 2020. We actually recorded this episode on, well, for me it was the 2nd of January, but for Dan it was the 1st. He was coming off a hangover and an absolute champion to want to do a podcast on the 1st of January. I don't know where his mind was at, but this was a great chat. Loved connecting with him, and I hope you guys get a lot out of it. But go to striker-metal.com. I'll put all the links to Striker and Dan in the show notes over at andysocial.net and andydowling.net. They've got some new music coming out this year. Definitely follow them on all the socials and all the streaming platforms and everything like that. Get ready for their new music. It's going to be coming very, very soon. Enough crapping on for me. Please enjoy this great chat with Dan Cleary. I woke up yesterday morning, New Year's Day, and my wife and I went through 3 bottles of champagne, and then I started mixing beers in as well. And so, the start of 2021 wasn't the best, but it seems to be a tradition for most people. So start at zero and work your way up.
Right, yeah, we're living parallel lives because we had 2 bottles of champagne and also mixed beer and rum in there too, and then woke up feeling a little worse for wear. But
oh man, that rum, dirty stuff.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I guess probably a good place to start off would be either now, coming off the edge of a hangover, or even leading up to the end of the year. I mean, what's on your mind when it comes to 2021 and where you're at in the world and sort of where the future sort of lies for yourself?
Well, I guess I don't know. Probably not like up to date on like our provincial like goings on, but in Alberta where we are in Canada, it's like a full lockdown right now. So that was like through Christmas, it was like, you're not allowed to have any gatherings outside of your household. So it was like, couldn't really see your family for Christmas and stuff like that. So that was pretty interesting. And then, I really just hope that the COVID stuff will disappear at some point. It doesn't look great, but I guess maybe it's on the way up. I don't know.
Have they put in any sort of time frames of when they review the lockdowns, or is it more just an indefinite period of time until they see some light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, like, I don't know what it is about Alberta, but we had like a big spike, and then they waited quite a while to actually like implement any kind of like sort of harsher restrictions on stuff. And yeah, like mid-December, they said basically like it's going to be 4 weeks. So I think it's like July 10th or 11th. I think it's this lockdown is lifted, but I'm not sure. We'll see if it's actually done anything or not. It was weird because like as soon as they announced everything was going to be closing, and then like the mall here was like just packed, and it was like the exact opposite effect of what you would assume this would like help with. It was just like, okay, now it's just absolutely packed in the mall.
Oh,
so
man.
I don't know.
We've had similar things. I mean, we've been lucky in the grand scheme of things compared to probably yourselves and other parts of the world. But even coming into Christmas, probably about a week or so before Christmas, we started to have a little bit of a spike in Sydney, and so they started to lock down parts of Sydney, which is really weird. So they tried to segregate like the northern suburbs of Sydney, and they weren't allowed to leave their area, and so it was a really hard thing to police. But as soon as that started to happen, the panic buying started again. It was just crazy, and you just think, didn't we learn our lessons at the beginning of the year? Like I'm sure we're all wiser and know how to manage this, and there's plenty to go around. But no, oh man, it just gets crazy, and then you just think you're just putting yourself in the line of fire, you know, for getting sick, and just the amount of people just sort of wedged up against each other, and people not wearing masks and all that sort of stuff. So it's just. You just sort of look at the situation. I'm sure it's the same for yourselves. It's sort of like you look around and go, man, like you just hope that something else comes along that can just make this all go away, because you can't just rely on people to do the right thing.
That's for sure. It's been pretty interesting. I feel like a lot of people here are like, everybody's like looking for a way around the restrictions. They're like, well, they're like looking at the wording of what the government said and being like, well, that means this, so I can still do this. And it's like, you kind of just want to be like, man, the whole point of this is just like, you know, don't do the things you really don't need to do. Like a lot of people are still just doing like, I don't know, going out to bars and stuff like that. And it's just like, if you don't need to be doing it, should you be doing it? But I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people trying to find the loopholes and try and find justification to go and do things that they feel are normal or within their rights to do. And it's even like with the masks, and I promise you this won't be just a COVID-19 podcast either. I feel like straight off the bat, it's the topic of the hour. But I remember being in a lift with somebody, and I had a mask on, they didn't, and they just couldn't help themselves. It was just dead quiet in the lift, and then she says to me, you know, that thing doesn't protect you. And I was just caught off guard. I had no idea what to say, but then I quickly sort of recovered and said, well, it's not about me protecting myself. It's probably just doing the right thing by you and me not spreading my germs around to you. So, you know, and it's got nothing to do with COVID. If I've got a cold or, you know, runny nose or whatever it might be, you know, it's kind of just a nice thing for me to do. I'm thinking of other people. And she sort of just like moaned and left the lift, and that was about it. But I think someone made a really good point a few months ago when they were talking about all the anti-mask stuff. And it was like, I think people pitched it the wrong way to people. I think they sort of said, instead of like worrying about other people, it's more about worrying about yourself. And I think if they put it back on the person and made them feel like it was about them, you may have got a bit more buy-in for people to wear masks, because I think people tend to be more selfish than selfless. So I don't know, but it's a weird thing just to watch people all individually try and manage this weird thing that's been going on for the past several months. Just everyone's, I think, true intentions or true emotions sort of come out, because some people can handle adversity and change really well, and other people just crumble.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing, and it's. I feel like there is a lot of like, sort of, like I listened to a podcast the other day with like a sort of a positive perspective, scientific perspective on the whole thing, and like when you listen to it, it's just like, oh yeah, all this stuff makes sense. Like all these precautions make sense and stuff, and when it's explained properly. But when it's just like you're someone sitting at home watching the news, and you're just like, well, I don't think this is right, and this just hasn't been explained very well. So I think people just get the impression like it's not legit.
Yeah.
But it's like with like anti-vaccine stuff too. Is it's like, I saw like a good meme about it. It was like, vaccine research, and it was like a laboratory, and like someone in there with like a, like the whole lab coat and everything. And then it was like anti-vax research, and it was like someone sitting on their toilet looking at their phone. Yeah. It's just like, that's exactly what's going on. It's like people getting all riled up on like crazy stuff on Facebook. And yeah.
Oh, and it's like the other good meme around that was, I can't remember exactly what it looked like, but it was something along the lines of somebody saying, in the first picture was like, I'm anti-vaccines, I don't want anything foreign going into my body. And then the next shot was them like popping pills and doing cocaine and all sorts of stuff and just getting off their, like this total hippie sort of psychedelic drug sort of thing, but just pumping anything into their system. And it's sort of like, well, there you go. Like everyone's a hypocrite. So, but I think you're right. I think it's what people generally digest on a day-to-day basis. Like, I can't imagine that a lot of the people that are really hard on that side of the fence with all the anti-mask and anti-vax stuff are really, proactively digesting a lot of different and varied content. I don't think they're really going out of their way to listen to lots of different podcasts and, reading books and all this sort of stuff. I think they're sort of in their own little echo chamber of, the TV, news, and then whatever their Facebook feed is, and it's usually, a very sort of insular way of sort of looking at the world. But when you've only got those sort of sources of information, then you're only sort of as good as that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's unfortunately, it seems like a lot of people aren't spending a lot of time to like seek out that information in other ways, and a lot of the time, if you do, the stuff you are drawn to, I think typically is negative. Like people are just like that. Like they'd rather, it's almost more interesting if it's a negative thing.
Mm. Oh, definitely. I mean, it's almost like the algorithm of just anything online now, social media or whatever it might be. And even just news stuff. It's, positive and good news doesn't tend to sort of go viral. It has to be, very niched if that's the case. But yeah, anything negative or controversial, or it's going to polarize or divide, people and opinion. That's the stuff that's just fuel on the fire. It's just and that's what sells. So that's what's going to draw everyone's attention to it. And I can't see that ever changing. So it's frustrating. It's really fucking frustrating. But yeah, I keep telling people, I go, man, like you can get sucked into all this and all this drama, but you can't control what other people think. And the less that you sort of invest your time in worrying about other people, the better it is for you. So you kind of just have to look after your own backyard and try and be the best person that you can, and keep your side of the fence all tidy. And your mental health in check, probably most importantly, because there's so much noise, there's just so much craziness out there. It's just not even worth spending too much time in it.
Yeah, and like for like a long time, I've been like really interested in like conspiracy theories and stuff like that. I've never been like a real like true believer in it. I've just always been interested in them. But it's like nowadays, a lot of that stuff is like, it's like really counterproductive. It's like everything's a conspiracy now, and it's just like, man, I just can hardly get into it anymore.
I think there's been a lot of people over the past year that have jumped onto that bandwagon, like have actually jumped into the whole conspiracy theory thing and become obsessed with it. Like just the amount of crap out there now. And I think just the way that, well, just because the world's been turned upside down. I mean, I think, there's no generation alive now, or, there'd be very few people left on Earth who are still alive who have experienced another sort of, disease, virus, epidemic or pandemic, in the world. I mean, it's been a long time. And so what we're all going through is really for the first time. So people that aren't, open-minded or resilient or can handle adversity, I think just lean into all the conspiracy theories because they don't trust what's going on. And when the news is all just, a lot of it's rubbish anyway, and it's all sort of pushing the fear out there, then, it's easy to get sucked into it. So there's just so many whack job theories out there. And the problem with it all is that, there is so much dodginess and corruption and all sorts of crap out there that there's enough validation where you can just sort of draw your own picture and come to a conclusion yourself and sort of validate it in your head and go, oh, well, it definitely is a conspiracy. And it's just so much harder to bring people back from the edge of mental breakdown, because it's just, there's too many things out there where there's too much information online where people can just draw those conclusions themselves.
Oh yeah.
Toxic stuff. But what's it been like for the band this year? Because I mean, is this the second lockdown that you guys have had? Have you had more than? I assume you've had more than one this year. You would have had one earlier in the year. But how's the band sort of adjusted to it? Have you guys sort of had to get pretty creative?
Yeah, it was kind of it was an interesting thing for us because, like, right when it's, well, oddly enough, we are like probably some of the very few amount of people who can say we went on a cruise in 2020. It seems ridiculous that we did that 70,000 tons of metal at the start of the year. And then like, right after that, we decided to film like a live in the studio thing just for our YouTube channel, for something to put out there. And then the COVID hit, and we had already planned on releasing this thing. So we were kind of like primed to like have stuff to release, for the first little bit at least. And then, since then we've just been writing and recording. We've got a couple songs now. I think we're just going to start releasing some singles until it makes sense to do any kind of album. But like, I feel like if you can't tour, it's kind of tough to like want to invest all this time into like just an album and then put it out and not be able to tour with it. It kind of sucks.
Yeah, definitely. Did you guys have sort of in the back of your mind some loose plans to tour in 2020 before all this stuff happened, or was it more of a case of that live in the studio, for YouTube initially was sort of the main thing, and then you guys were going to start writing anyway?
I'm trying to think of what I can hardly remember.
It's like a lifetime ago now, isn't it?
I know. Yeah. So, well, we had a pretty cool year. Like, it was coming together. We were going to do some touring in the States, and then some pretty big festivals in Europe. And then I think we were going to do another European tour in the fall. So quite a bit of touring, and I'm sure we would have tried to jam in some sort of album recording in there too. But yeah, all that stuff got like postponed and then postponed again. So the closest thing we have is like November of 2021 for something that looks like it might happen. And I'm still like not 100% sure, because I think that one's a European tour, and then each country sort of has to align properly to be able to like go over there. And like, what happens if you go, like some friends of ours were touring during the COVID thing, and then it was just like, do we go home now or should we keep playing? And so they ended up just having to cancel and come home. But it was like the next day there was like no more flights.
Wow.
Something like that. So it was pretty crazy. So it would be pretty rough to get stuck in a situation like that too. So I feel like everything's going to have to really cool down before I think any real serious touring happens.
Yeah, I've said it a few times on the podcast to people, but I've got a lot of friends that had tours booked in and then rescheduled them and rescheduled again, and some of them are still sort of booked in for like March, April of next year, and in Europe. And I'm just going, mate, like, I hope you guys aren't actually booking plane tickets or accommodation and all this sort of stuff. Like, I hope you're leaving that to the last minute, because I've got a funny feeling you're going to be moving those dates again. It's way too close. And as you said, like, it's not just a case of going to one country where everything's sort of somewhat controlled. And so if something happens, it's going to happen, across the board. I mean, these European tours, you go into multiple countries, everyone's got a different approach and a different, mentality with how they manage COVID and all this sort of stuff. And so what one country does versus another, and sort of, infections and all sorts of stuff. Oh God, it's like, it's a big gamble. So yeah, hopefully by by November it'll be a little bit clearer as far as where the world's at with it all. But man, I don't know. I have no idea. It's just the weirdest thing. It's like, I think it's been sort of the topic of conversation for the past at least 6 months, where everyone's sort of, throwing out some theories about when we can start touring again, because I don't know. It just keeps getting blown out.
Yeah, that's why we've sort of kind of decided to do this idea of we have material, new stuff, and we're just going to record it in like small chunks and then just release it and just sort of keep going like that. Like, I mean, I think music is kind of going that way anyways, where people are doing more like, like a monthly single or something like that. And like, instead of having an album come out, just release 10 songs in 10 months or something. Yeah. But like that's hard to say too, because I mean, we still like the idea of releasing an actual album and stuff. So it's but what are you gonna do, right? Yeah,
I mean, it's tough, because I mean, I'm one of those old school guys that loves records and CDs and all that sort of stuff, and I've embraced streaming music and all the faults and flaws that it has, and the controversies around it. I see the benefits in having it, but I think where it's at now, it's this weird thing, and you nailed it. It's sort of that division between how people choose to put music out now, and I still love albums. I love digesting the whole thing and listening to it in the flow that it was meant to be put together. Because everyone's got a method of how they want to put their songs together and how each song flows into each one, all that kind of stuff, and even for us now in our band, I mean, we're sort of looking at going, man, like, do we go down that path of just putting out a single every month? And I think the biggest motivation with a lot of that now is stuff like Spotify, where that Spotify is going to pick a song and it's going to chuck it into their playlists and give you more streams and more exposure. And so if anything, it's rewarding you for drip feeding your music instead of just putting out an album, because you put one album out, it only gives you one song. And then you just got to cross your fingers and hope it gets picked up in playlists and all that sort of stuff. And so it's really changing the behavior of how musicians put out music, which, I mean, that's always a scary thing. But, it's even with the release dates. I was talking to somebody about this a while ago, but, everyone started releasing all their music on Fridays, because that was when Spotify did their new release radar playlists. And before that, it was, different days of the week. And so now I'm like, well, you put a single out or an album out on a Friday, and there's like, I don't know, 50, 100, 200, 300 different releases all coming out the same day. You're trying to get your foot in the door with Metal Injection or Metal Sucks or whoever is out there to try and highlight your music, and it's just like, good luck.
Yeah. I think it's like, it's sort of that like gaming the algorithm type thing, where it's like Spotify and YouTube are sort of rewarding newer content, like but yeah, like I don't really know. It seems like it's always changing too, and I also feel like we've been an independent band for quite a while now, and I feel like the edge that being independent has is slowly going away, because like big streaming platforms have so much more power now that you can, like, if your record label kind of like has essentially like a deal with Spotify that, like, oh, we'll give your whatever preference to your bands for playlist placement and stuff like that. It's kind of like what it was like with radio before, where it was like the big labels are like, oh yeah, obviously all these radio stations that we're in cahoots with are going to play all our singles because we have this arrangement, right? So
yeah, 100%. I've noticed that as well, and we've been independent for years, and if anything, I think it's the same with you guys. I get the vibe from you guys that you kind of wear it as a bit of a badge of pride. Like, you really, it's a good thing to be independent, and you sort of, I think you guys appear to have a really good DIY sort of ethic with the way that you guys put out your music and tour and just put yourselves out there. And we're very similar on our side, but yeah, like trying to see Spotify as sort of like a platform to to find new fans and try and get out there to the masses is really difficult. And, you know, years ago it was all about, the gatekeepers are disappearing now. You know, it's an open market. Everyone's got a chance now. And it's kind of going back in the opposite direction again. So it's a good point. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, where there's an availability for a gatekeeper, there will be one at some point. So, you get in there. Yeah, and it's sort of like the nature of it. It's the, what do they call it? Like the attention economy. So it's tough. But I mean, like for us, we're kind of just like trying to navigate that and still like do the things we actually want to do. And not just like, you know, try and pander so hard to like, you know, we're just doing things now just to feed the algorithm or whatever. It's like, seems a little bit weird. I don't know. It's sort of not comfortable in a way.
Yeah, it's. I think from our side, you know, I've certainly fell into the trap of approaching it like a science and sort of experimenting different things to try and catch the wave of a good algorithm or whatever it might be, in just the hope that something works in our favor. But I think, you start to lose track of the whole reason why you do it in the first place. And I think a lot of the short-term hacks and tips and tricks to try and get ahead of, you know, the attention, I think it's very short-lived. It doesn't last long. And I think you might be, you know, I mean, just using Spotify as that example, but you might be at the top of a playlist and get some great streams out of it. But ultimately, you know, a week or a month later or 6 months later, you know, how much of your music is going to be remembered by those people that were hearing that song through a playlist with several hundred other bands as well. And so it's a case of, you know, what do you do to actually maintain your longevity and build that sort of loyal following of people that love what you do, instead of trying to throw the net out there and just hope that you can pick up a bunch of random people as they run past you, you know, with the attention span of a goldfish. So it's this tough thing, man, because you sort of you see a lot of peers as well, a lot of other people, you know, mates and just other people out there that are doing similar stuff to you, and you know, they catch a break and they get some great exposure, and you sort of look at them going, oh man, like, why can't that happen to us? But then I think everyone tends to burn out at some point in time if they're going too hard as well. So it's there's a lot of mind games with it all.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, we've had so many conversations, and I feel like to the point where we just like, we didn't even know what we were trying to accomplish anymore. We're just like, well, we got to do things this way because it's like, this is the way things are going now. And in the end, by the end of the conversation, we're just like, so we haven't actually decided anything. And we're just kind of like, oh, okay. So do it like we always have? Okay, sure.
Have you guys noticed a difference in, I hate using the word fan all the time because it sounds, I don't know, I've got a weird thing with the word fan, but with your fan base, have you noticed a change with the people that listen to your music over the years? Because I think you guys have been around since, 2007-ish or something like that?
Yeah, that was like when we didn't release anything until 2010, I think. But anyway, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. Like, I don't think it's changed too much. I think we maybe have a little, maybe slightly less of like sort of like the hardcore, like underground metal fans, maybe. Because I think we've always wanted to, like, you know, like you guys have modern production and stuff like that. I've never wanted to have our albums sound like a 80s LARP, you know, because it's like, I don't think any of those bands from back then, I mean, outside of maybe like some of the old black metal stuff where the goal was never to have bad sounding recordings. I think everybody was just limited with their budget. And now it's like, you can have insane sounding albums and it's not that expensive anymore. And like, so I just have never understood why you would like sort of purposefully, I mean, I get that it has like that, like nostalgia kind of thing to it, but that's never been like what we've wanted to do, like wearing spandex on stage and stuff like that. So that kind of stuff. It's just kind of like, it doesn't seem very genuine because it's sort of like you're just kind of dressing up like, but I mean, we've done some of it like early on, like when we were just like, you know, having fun, goofing around. But like, there's nothing wrong with it. But I think for us, we've always wanted to be more like modern sounding with that sort of in the influence of old school metal kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know a lot of friends of mine who are, and I'll have to be careful with how I word this, but but they're very sort of, they're true metal warriors. Like I can't dance around it, you know, and even that production thing that you mentioned is 100%. Like if it doesn't have tinny, sort of really sort of dry, just really crappy production, then they turn off straight away. And it's almost like this blasphemous thing to do. Like you're going against the whole, you know, romantic vibe of what 80s metal's all about, you know, all this sort of stuff. And you're right, like it's a case of, I don't think a lot of those bands had fuck all money. Like they just couldn't afford to do it. A lot of these bands weren't on major labels, and they just made the best of what they could do. And you know, a lot of that stuff in the 80s is awesome. I love listening to it, but yeah, when you hear a band these days trying to replicate that sound, that production, the production more so than the sound, I just scratch my head because I listen to these songs and I just go, man, that riff sounds so good, but fuck, I can barely get through this song because it just does not, like, especially if I've come off another song that's got that modern production, just sounds really clear and just it's just got that edge to it, and then you go straight into something that sounds like it was recorded on a cassette deck, and you just go, man, like I understand where it's coming from, but no, man, I can't. I'm not going to come back and listen to it again.
Yeah, well, that's like I had this old iPod from like 10 years ago that got like, it went through the laundry or something and like it didn't work, and then like I like took it out of the drawer and it turned on, and I was like, oh, like it's like back from the dead. And it's got like the funniest, like all this really, really old school stuff, like bands like Attacker and Hellstar and like a lot of like really sort of like undergroundy type speed metal bands from the 80s and stuff. And then I was listening to some of it and I was just like, man, I can almost not listen to this. Like I used to listen to it all the time, but it's like, I think in 10 years ago till now, like some of the production that you hear now is just like insane. It sounds so good. And then you go back to that and I'm just like, this is almost unlistenable to me now.
all the true metal fans are going, oh, I can't take this in. This is too much. I've got to go back and listen to my cult demos. And
yeah, but it's like it's like the songs are really good still. Like it's just, you kind of just wish that you could just like throw a switch and have like modern production on it, same performances, everything the same, but just like remixed. Like, I don't think I would miss it, that production. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a lot of those bands from the 80s who went back and attempted to re-record their stuff as well. And some bands did a great job, like, but other bands like just missed the mark completely. But, you know, all those hardcore fans would just turn around and go, nah, the originals are where it's at. But I think people sort of kid themselves when they sort of, if you're looking at it objectively at the sound, you're definitely going to lean towards, you know, the modern production. But I think people, you know, stick to the originals because, as you said before, it's nostalgic. You know, they're probably listening to it at a time in their life where it was a defining moment, and they were probably just getting into music or heavy music or whatever it might be, and they're probably partying more and having, you know, more memorable times or whatever. And so that's why people become a little bit unreasonably passionate about stuff that sounds like shit.
Yeah, I guess maybe it was because like you know, a lot of that metal, like the 80s speed metal stuff that I was into, I wasn't like, I don't think I was really super into it until like I was maybe like 18 or 19 or something like that. Like when I started getting like deep into it, like before that I was into, you know, like Metallica, Megadeth, like Iron Maiden, all that stuff. But like not like sort of the more underground stuff. And then it wasn't really in like, I wasn't like 14, 15, like in those years where whatever you listen to is like burned into your memory. So I didn't have a lot of like attachment to it. I was just like interested in listening to it. And then like, I remember it happened, Testament re-recorded, I think, a bunch of stuff with Andy Sneap. And it was the First Strike Still Deadly album. And I listened to it and I was like, holy shit, this is sick. And then I showed it to a friend of mine who's really into the old school stuff. And he was like, I can't even listen to this. All these songs are slower than they were on the original. I'm like, shit, I didn't even notice that.
Wow. I didn't even know that they were slower. Oh, because with Testament in particular, I got into Testament right when The Gathering came out, or not long after The Gathering came out. So I only knew probably a couple of songs from maybe like Practice What You Preach or something like that. And but The Gathering was like the first main full album that I heard, and I was blown away. I mean, there was just nothing heavier than that. That was just insane. Like, just everything on that album is just so good, and it still holds up even now. And so I just remember conversations with friends, and it was like, oh man, I'd love to hear some of this old Testament stuff, but like in the style of The Gathering, like that modern production that they've got. And then lo and behold, they end up doing that. But I didn't even know about any tempo difference. I wouldn't even have a clue. I just listened to it and it just sounds so heavy and huge. And I mean, that's probably one of the great examples of where a band's done a really good job at injecting new life into their back catalogue.
Yeah, I thought that album sounded so good, and like I listened to that album like more than I listened to like all of their other stuff, just because it was just so good, and the songs were still so sick, and the performances were really great. So I mean, it's still fun to listen to the old stuff, but I think, like you were saying, one of the problems is like if you go between the two, like if you hadn't listened to any music all day and you put on an old album, you're like, oh, this is great. But if you like were listening to like in a playlist of like a bunch of modern stuff and then something old, you're kind of like, oh, this is sort of like a letdown.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've even seen it on Spotify where I've seen one of our songs get wedged into a playlist, and I just look at the songs either side of it, and I just go, oh man, I hope that somebody's listening to this playlist on shuffle, because if they're listening to it in order, our song's it's not gonna stand out in a good way compared to what's on either side of our track. And I guess that's where you lose a bit of control with the stuff online, is that, people, well, I guess you've never had control apart from the people that listen to your albums from start to finish. How people choose to listen to your music, it's going to be up to the individual. So you're really at the mercy of what people are already listening to prior to putting your songs on, and you just got to cross your fingers and hope that it stacks up against whatever they're listening to beforehand. Hopefully they'll listen to something really shitty before they come to our music.
Yeah.
So with because you guys obviously put out that studio album this year, but it was a couple of years since you guys put out the last full-length album. Was that what was that, Play to Win?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So did you guys notice a difference in attention, or sort of, did you guys get a bit of momentum? I can never say that word properly. Momentum from that album at all compared to previous albums? Because I felt like when that one came out, I don't know, maybe you had some good PR behind the album or whatever, but it seemed to get a little bit more traction, and it was talked about a lot more than probably some of the earlier stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to say, because like I think it's been like sort of incremental growth for us. Like we've always just been sort of working at it and trying to get better at, every different aspect of how we do things, like including like getting more people on our team as far as like promotion and stuff like that goes. It was funny because like that album, we like set out, we were like, we're going to do something like so different for us. We're going to like explore different ideas, and then like looking back at it, it's not really that different. But at the time we were like, whoa, this is like risky. Like it's not at all. We like put some synth layers in or something, and that was like, whoa, shit. Like, but yeah, like, it was interesting because we thought it might come across as like a little softer than some of our other albums. And we actually had sort of the opposite, like a lot of people who were into us early on, and then they sort of when we were doing sort of maybe a little bit more modern-y stuff, and like our self-titled album, I think they really liked Play to Win because it's a little bit more retro-y. So I don't know, it was just well received, and I think it's just sort of how the trajectory's been going for us, I guess.
I definitely got the vibe when the album came out, and I saw the artwork, and I thought, are they gonna chuck some synths into this into this album? They've got that color scheme happening there, which I think it sounds awesome, and I think just that, I don't know. I mean, I think anybody trying to interpret or give an opinion of someone else's music, you always got to tread carefully. But there's something, I don't know, a little bit in a really positive way, a simplistic, straightforward approach, which just made those songs really punchy and stand out. And I think that sort of, and I think what you said before, sort of, you guys are already on a trajectory sort of in that direction anyway. So it's probably just helped just take you guys up to that next little notch in the career path of a band. Yeah,
it's always interesting. Like I always feel like by the time we're done something, I'm just like, shit. Let's just, let's get rid of it. We'll do a new one. Like I don't know if you guys feel that way too, but like, I'm always like really stoked on an album, and then like by the time you've toiled over it for so long, you're just like, shit, I never want to hear this again.
Yeah, Tim in our band's like the mastermind, where he's probably the main songwriter and sort of arranger and also does all the production. He's got his own studio and everything. I mean, he's pretty much our secret weapon. Well, not so secret weapon. And the mental anguish he puts himself through every album is just, he's always on the verge of just going postal, throwing in the towel, giving up on everything in life. And it's just a real careful, like you have to walk on eggshells around him towards the end of the album, because it's really do or die sort of situation. And by the time that album's out, he is so mentally drained. He hates the thing. He doesn't want to hear it ever again. And it usually takes him about a year or 18 months or something before he might just hear a song by accident and go, oh yeah, that sounds all right. I guess it's not too bad after all. And the rest of us are sort of like trying to whore it out there, trying to drum up some hype and go, yeah, check out this album. This is really good, blah, blah, blah. And Tim's just like, just don't even fucking play that thing near me. I do not want to hear this thing.
Yeah. It's so funny how that works. Like, and that's actually like one of the things that has been interesting, like since we're working on new music, but we have 3 songs that we're working on, and then we're just going to release them like sort of one after another whenever we figure out what kind of schedule we're going to do. But like, it's been really fun because you can spend a lot of time like tinkering with stuff that you might normally have to just sort of like bulldoze through while you're like doing an album, because you're like, shit, I have like 10 more songs to record. So it's been kind of nice that way.
Yeah. I guess it keeps things somewhat fresh. You're not sort of totally getting taxed by a long, arduous, recording where you've got one song after another. You can sort of keeps the energy levels up, where you don't have to sort of dig too deep into a whole catalogue of songs and try and get them all on the same page and the same quality and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, we'll see how it goes. It's going to be a bit of an experiment for us, but whatever. I mean, it's COVID times.
Yeah, that's right. You're not going to. Are any of your songs about the pandemic? Because I've got a feeling there's going to be a lot of 2021 songs or albums.
Dude, I can't do it, man. I've always been like, I've always liked songs that are like sort of broad, like topic wise.
Yeah.
Either I like it if it's confusing to me and I don't understand what it's about, or like if the lyrics are really cryptic or something and it's like, ooh, this is like interesting, like I don't really get it right away, or if they're like sort of more general about like a more of a general idea or a topic or something like that. Like But I find it, yeah, like I've seen a couple that are like really on the nose about the pandemic, about the lockdown and stuff. And I'm just like, man, like I know that they're trying to do like, you know, it's like if Rage Against the Machine wrote a song about the pandemic, it would like slam, right? But it's like, it just seems like, it's going to sound terrible. It just sounds boomery to me.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed, I mean, this has been one of the funny things and slightly depressing things about the internet in 2020, and no doubt it'll continue on into this year, but just to really see the separation of opinions, and where you've got very frustrated musicians who probably when times were good would not be sitting around on their phone or in front of a laptop, you know, scrolling through social media feeds. But now that they've got a bit more time on their hands and they're frustrated, and a lot of them aren't dealing with all of this terribly well, that they're starting to get really opinionated, which is fine. You can have an opinion, but where they choose to air it can get a bit questionable. And so you're really starting to see bands, and you could be right. It could be a generation thing. Maybe some of these bands are a little bit older than us, and they're getting online and they're throwing their opinions out there about all these social issues and these things going on around the world, and then starting to release music as well. And I'm just thinking, oh man, I really used to like you guys, but I don't know. I don't know if I can listen to you guys the same way again, because I just saw that comment online, or that soapbox moment that you've had on Facebook or whatever, and I'm like, oh, dude, really? Come on. It's not good. So yeah, I'm excited, but in a very sort of, you know, bemused sort of way of what bands are going to release this year, because I think there's going to be a lot of opinionated stuff that comes out from metal bands, and probably some of the more legacy older bands, underground metal bands and probably a lot of US bands, to be honest. I think just with all the turmoil that's going on in the United States at the moment, I'm cringing at the thoughts of what's going to come out over the next 12 months.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is like, it's almost like lazy lyric writing. And I mean, like, I'm not one to say that I'm like a real great lyric writer or anything, but I just think that, like, if you're going to write a song about like the lockdown, you probably shouldn't like use the exact terms and stuff. Like, don't use, like, find a metaphor for it or something like that. Make it a bit more interesting than just being like, you know, lockdown under control or whatever. You know, it's just kind of like, you know, sort of dance around the topic a little bit, make it a little more interesting for the listener.
Oh man, but it's funny because if you listen to a lot of the especially probably more so the US 80s thrash stuff, a lot of that stuff was, especially towards the late 80s, was very politically charged. There was a lot of stuff sort of, you know, especially what was going around the world at that time. And so I think those bands sort of, and the ones that are still around now, I guess they're probably primed to be sort of staying in that direction and continuing to be quite political. But yeah, I think it's sort of like the CGI stuff, and I've crapped on about this quite a bit on the podcast, but, you know, back in the early 2000s when, you know, you had all the Napster stuff and people didn't give a shit about CDs or just buying albums anymore. And so bands, especially the older bands, sort of went, oh, well, no one's buying our music anymore, so who gives a fuck about artwork? And so they did this fucking god-awful, like, CGI bullshit artwork. And it was just like the popular thing to do. It was just like dial in, oh, what have we got, $50 left of our budget? Okay, let's just get our daughter who's just learning how to use a computer to go and slap together some images, and, you know, and then that'll be the album. And it was just coming from like these old bands who had classic albums in the 80s or early 90s or whatever, and you're just looking at it going, oh man, you just threw this shit away. And I feel that that's going to be just, you know, on that topic of, you know, lyrics and just, you know, trying to be creative and just try and put a little bit more of a mysterious spin onto different topics. I just don't think there's going to be a lot of that from some of these bands. I think they're gonna panic because they haven't been able to do anything for the last 12 months. They're going to dial something in, they're going to churn something out, and I think a lot of it. There's going to be a lot of. I think there's going to be more misses than hits, I think.
Yeah, Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't know. Like, I don't want to like, be like too negative about that, but like, I feel like you're definitely right. We're gonna see a lot of cringe levels that are going up.
This is now the antisocial shit talking metal.
Everybody sucks but us.
That's right. Look how good we are.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, one thing I was going to ask you about is you guys got a JUNO Award last year, and you guys took out what was it for, like the metal or hard rock category?
Yeah, it was just metal and hard rock category.
What does that do anything? Have you guys noticed anything since winning the award? I mean, it's a bit hard with all the COVID stuff because you can't exactly go out and milk it. But did you? I mean, what's the process of winning the award to begin with, and then what did you experience anything afterwards as far as any sort of, I don't know, any sort of swell or any sort of attention or anything that you could sort of capitalize on?
It's not like super obvious. Like, it's not like we got like a wave of new fans or anything like that. I mean, I think people who like us are going to listen to us, and people who don't like that style aren't going to listen to it. So, but it's been interesting in almost more so in like a business side. It's like kind of like it's like being signed to a label, right? Like you always get that like sort of stamp of approval, like, oh, this is a signed band. So like that sort of gives you sort of street cred, I guess, street cred in the business world. But I think this is sort of a similar type of thing, but more on like sort of the inside business stuff. It's like, maybe more people would be interested in working with us now because we have that. It's sort of like a stamp of approval in a certain way. So,
I guess it's kind of like something for your resume, in a way.
Yeah. It's almost really all it is, and I mean it's been great, like for our parents and stuff. They're loving it. They get to tell people that. Like, I don't know. I don't think I've really told like anybody, outside of like my immediate friend group who already knew that it was a thing that we were nominated for, but it was like my parents going around being like, oh yeah, my son, he won a Juno. Which is really funny. But
I guess it's one of those things where it's like, in Canada, I would assume it's if it's an equivalent of like the Grammys, then it's a mainstream award. So you don't have to know anything about heavy music or metal or even a great deal about music at all, but you're going to know what a Juno is, and so that sort of, it kind of separates you from the pack a little bit in sort of more general terms. So I guess it is kind of cool. I mean, especially if you're trying to like tell your mum or your dad about, oh, hey, we're playing like, I don't know, like Whack-In or Bang Your Head or something like that. And they're like, oh, that's lovely, dear. Like, whatever. And for us, it's like, come on, it's going to be like one of the best festivals out there or whatever. But then you win a Juno, and it's like, oh, there you go. That's now you got your parents' attention.
Yeah, you're totally right. It's like mainstream recognition, I guess. Whereas like, I mean, for us, the thing we're chasing all the time is like play a bigger stage with a bigger crowd. Like that's sort of like always the goal. And it's never really been like, oh, we want to make this much money or we want to like sell this many albums. It's always been like, what's the biggest, loudest stage we can play on? And how many people can we play to? So it's like an interesting, what am I trying to say here? Like this the hangover kicking in right now. Like, all my thoughts just. But yeah, it's like the JUNO Award is just more of like a mainstream success marker that people outside of the band might actually be like, oh, that's like they're obviously doing well, and then like for us, it's awesome, but it's not like main stage Vulcan awesome or whatever.
Yeah, I think it'll be good to have there when you need to have, I guess, as you said before, more the type of business discussions with labels or with booking agents or whoever you're trying to win over from a business point of view. Then that's good leverage to have, and sort of gives you a bit more. I mean, you guys have already got legitimacy anyway, but I think it gives you that extra edge that a lot of other bands just don't have. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, I just, up until probably a year ago, I had no idea what it was, and now I know what it is.
Yeah. I mean, like, Justin Bieber's got some Juno Awards, so we're in the same sort of same caliber now.
I can see the next press release when you guys put out like the next single or whatever it is. It'll be like Juno Artist 2020, alongside other great iconic artists such as Justin Bieber or something like that. Yeah. I'm sure the German press will lap that one up big time.
Oh yeah, get them real fired up.
Yeah. Hey, it's all about
these fucking guys.
Yeah, stir the controversy. It's the only way to get attention. Oh, cool, man. So I think you sort of alluded to it earlier on with the songs that you guys are working on at the moment, that you probably don't have an idea of how you're going to release them yet, or do you have sort of a bit of a ballpark idea of when you're thinking about putting out a song?
Yeah, like our original timeline was to start in January, so I guess this month, which seems crazy that it's already here. Yeah. But yeah, we were just going to do like, let's start at the start of the year and do like put a song out every month for the next, we've got however many songs, so maybe just all year long, just a new song every month. It might be too ambitious, I don't know, because we want to do like music videos and everything, but we kind of got slowed down here with the lockdown, so it's like, hey, we can't really get together to film a music video and nobody's allowed to get together to do anything. But yeah, like, I think we're gonna try doing some of these ourselves. We've done a few in the past, like there's a couple music videos of ours. I actually filmed, there's a video for Crossroads, the song that we shot in my parents' basement. And you would never know because it's just like backlit and stuff, but it's funny. Like if you turned the lights on, you'd be like, this isn't like a metal video. What's going on in here? But it looks cool once it's all put together and stuff. But yeah, so we're going to have to try and get creative in that way. Because it's definitely... yeah, we don't want to be doing like the really corny videos, because it's just like, I mean, like you kind of want to present your music with the, everything at the same level. We put a lot of time into like writing and recording, and it's like, then you're going to like present it with this terrible video. It's kind of sucks.
Yeah. It's only been sort of in the last couple of years that I've started to be a little bit more conscious about how I listen to new music. I'll always go and listen to the song first before I watch a video clip, because the amount of times I've watched a video and just been completely turned off, like I'm not even listening to the song anymore. I'm looking at these weird mannerisms, this person like sort of looking into the camera or not quite looking at the camera, or reading, you can tell that they're reading lyrics that are sitting just underneath the camera lens, or there's something dodgy going on in the background, or whatever it might be, or some really bad acting, or some horrible like, cheesy, minimal dressed women in the background sort of trying to get everyone's attention. And it's just like, oh man, like I don't even know what I'm listening to anymore. So I've had to go back and go, okay, now I'm just going to listen to the song on its own, and then if I really, really love the song or whatever, I'll go and check out the video afterwards, because it just sometimes just does not do a song justice at all. And it's a fine line. You're right. Like everyone's got, and I think the hard thing now is that I think the technology's there. Like it's cheaper to do a video clip. It's cheaper to have a really good camera, and a lot of the stuff now, even like the newest iPhones and Samsungs and all this sort of stuff, like the cameras on them are top shit. They're really good stuff, but you're only as good as the person who's actually filming it and putting it together. And so if you've got a shitty perspective or bad editing or production or whatever it is, then it doesn't matter how crystal clear the video is. It's just gonna look bad. So so more so than ever before, I think lots of bands are putting out video clips, but it's that having that right eye and the creativity to be able to put together a compelling video. I think that's the point of difference, which a lot of bands miss. So good luck.
Yeah, I know it's so tough, because I've done a lot of the editing for most of our videos, and I've like looked back at some of the like older ones, and I'm like, shit, like I was like, one of the lessons I've learned is not putting myself in enough shots as the singer, like, because I'm, trying to be like a fair, I don't want to just be like, oh yeah, Dan edited the video, so it's only Dan video. But and then I look back and I'm like, it's kind of weird that when there's singing going on, it's like a shot of like the bass or something like that. And it's like, I think in general, it's always better to have like the vocalist on the screen, like the singing is like the most important part of the song to most people. So it's sort of like it kind of fucks it up because you're watching it and the singing's going on, but you're kind of distracted because it's not showing the singer and stuff. So it's like, that's something I've had to be more aware of now, try and put myself in when I'm singing,
Have you got like a fascination with I guess video production and sort of, doing more in this sort of space, or is this sort of more of has it come from like a means to the end, like, well, nobody else is going to do it, or we can't find somebody, or we don't have the resources or the budget or whatever, so I'm just going to try and learn how to do it, and that's where it's come from?
I think it's a little bit of both. I've always really liked music videos. I used to watch we used to have this like metal hour on the Much Music here in Canada, which was the Power Hour. And it showed it was all like awesome old metal videos and stuff. And I was like always like obsessed with watching it. So I've always really liked like music videos and image and stuff like that. And it's just, I feel like it's been tough because it's like, not only you gotta like write music, gotta, learn to sing as best as you can, and then learn to record music, and then learn the music business. And then it's like, now you got to chuck on social media, and then you got to stack all of that on top of like, now you have to learn how to be a director for music videos. It's like, shit. Fuck, how many hats can you wear, right? Like, so
building your own resume.
Yeah. And like, the problem is it's all fun stuff to do. It's just, it takes a lot of time. And then there's always a learning curve with everything. So it's like, we've been getting more efficient at recording and stuff. And then, by the end of this year, if we've done like 12 music videos, we should be pretty good at that too, I think. I don't know.
Well,
or maybe not. I don't know.
Time will tell. Everyone's going to be waiting and watching now. Okay, Dan. All right, what have you got up your sleeve? But man, I'm pretty excited for it. I mean, as you said, like, it's that debate of what is the best way to put out music these days, and you know what, like, I mean, there's no harm in trying something, even if it's a one-off sort of thing. And if it doesn't hit, then you go back to what you're doing before, or you pivot and try something different. So it's I think it's cool. I mean, it's definitely something that we've thought about as a band to try and convince all of us within the band to drip feed music out over a 12-month period. And I know there are a lot of bands that put out a few singles throughout the year, but to do it to that extent is a big task, but it could be pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do and how you manage it all, because it'll definitely be a different thing to an album. It'll be different, having to maintain that social media presence and the publicity and making sure the songs are out there and moving, but still getting the next one ready to go and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I'm, from our band's point of view, like I'm that guy who's just, I'm the social media guy. I'm the guy who's doing the marketing. I'm the guy who's, trying to tee up the PR and all that sort of stuff. So the cogs in my head are turning when you've been explaining this stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, okay. So maybe you could do this, maybe you could do that. So, yeah, man, it's cool. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think it's been really fun so far with like the idea of like you put out a single and it's not really committed to an album. So if it's like an oddball song and it doesn't work out, it's kind of just like, well, it's just like out there and it's not cemented in place on an album or anything. And it's like, if people don't really like it, then just don't listen to that one song. So it's kind of given us some freedom, and we might be suffering a little bit from the same thing before. It was when we were like, oh, Play to Win's going to be such a crazy album for us. And then when we listen, we're like, wow, we just added like synth and that was it. So it might be something like that too. But yeah, we'll see. It's going to be pretty interesting. I don't know. We might be in over our heads, but I guess we'll find out.
Well, we'll all be watching. I'm going to chuck some links in for everyone to check out. No doubt there'll be plenty of people who know you guys well, but for anybody that doesn't, I'll make sure they are directed to the right places, and everyone's following you guys on the streaming services, so they can jump on those new songs as they come out. But Dan, I appreciate the time, man. I appreciate you catching up and having a chat, and I'm absolutely blown away that you've been able to maintain some level of focus with me on New Year's Day, the 1st of January, and you're doing a fucking podcast with some moron in Australia when you could be just lying on the couch just trying to nursing hangover. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I got plenty more time to do that, so no worries, man. It's been great talking to you, man.
Alrighty, a call to action, folks. Go and get behind Dan and the boys in Striker by going to striker-metal.com. There you'll find all their social media pages, their music. Go and subscribe, go and follow, go and like, go and love heart, go and click on whatever fucking buttons you need to click on to support great people doing great things. Dan's also on Striker. Well, he's in Striker, but he's also on Instagram, and you can search for a DC_Striker, and he's also on Facebook, and of course, if you just can't work out what the fuck I'm talking about, just go to andysocial.net and andydowling.net, where I'll have all the links to Dan, Striker, everything we spoke about in the show notes over there. And of course, you're listening to this through some kind of podcast player at the moment, or you could be on YouTube or something like that. Click on the description of this episode, and there'll be a bunch of clickable links. Stab your little sausages against the screen. I mean your fingers, by the way. Get your mind out of the gutter. Go and click on those links. Go and reach out to Dan, say hello, and give him a little bit of anti-social love. I'm sure he'd be stoked to hear from you. Now, before we wrap it up, of course, you guys know what I'm going to say. Patreon. Patreon.com/Andy Dowling. We are in a new year now, and we have upped the ante. It is now a 2-guest episode a week format. And for people that aren't familiar, what we're doing is every Monday morning, 6 a.m. Sydney time, I have a brand new guest on Antisocial who is from a wide range of different backgrounds. It could be music, it could be sports, it could be science, it could be the arts, it could be anyone that I find interesting is going to be our Monday morning guest. So get used to that. That's what I've been doing for the past 5 or so years. But then Wednesday morning, 6 a.m. Sydney time, I will be introducing a return guest to Antisocial, someone who's been on the podcast over the past several years, or an Australian musician. I really want to support and highlight the great musicians that are here in Australia and the great music that's coming out of this country without turning the podcast into a music podcast solely. So this is the best of both worlds. I have my cake and I'm eating it too. So there you go. Patreon.com/Andy Dowling. The whole reason why we're doing this now is because of the people on Patreon supporting me, getting behind the podcast, and just backing me and just helping lift this podcast into the next level of fucking podcasting or whatever it is. Now, I'm going to do some shout outs, and usually every week I will do a shout out to the people that are on my social circle tier, my $10 tier, and my $20 we need to talk tier, or whatever it's called. But I'm going to do something different for this particular episode. I'm just going to do a quick shout out for everybody who's been on Patreon in 2020 and coming into 2021. These are the people who are just backing the podcast. They're tuning into the Patreon-only podcast episode that comes out Tuesday morning, 6 a.m. At Sydney time. So lots of people getting behind the podcast, and these people are basically the reason why Antisocial is running at full steam, and we're starting a brand new year on a high note with this 2-guest episode format. So here we go. Thank you very much to Ryan from Adelaide, Andrew from Perth, Mick G from Sydney, Ash from Deniliquin, Dan from Dapto, Riley from Sydney, the Towhider guys from Melbourne, Lords of the Trident from Madison, Wisconsin, Sean from Oregon, the US, Johnny from South Australia, Zach from Adelaide, Rod from Rayleigh in North Carolina, Matt from Adelaide, Saul from Oxford in the UK, Patrick from Canberra, Liam from Brisbane, Tom from Melbourne, Chris from Sydney, Frank from Utengruppenbach in Germany, Lewis from Airlie Beach, Turner from Armidale, Samantha from Sydney, Brendo from Leeton, Tim from Canberra, James from Brisbane, Bradley from Canberra, Sean from Melbourne, Kurt from Brizzy, Jason from Adelaide, Christian from Canberra, Cole from Port Kembla, and Jordan from Bendigo. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. People, you can sign up from only $1 a month. It's dirt cheap, set and forget. It's a little feel-good payment. You won't even notice it. There are additional tiers there if you want to get access to the exclusive Patreon podcast episode where I do a bit of karaoke. I talk some shit, tell some stories, and there's a lot of fun happening there. But any support that you can throw my way on Patreon is absolutely appreciated, and lots of grand plans in 2021, and it's all because of you legends on Patreon. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Patreon.com/Andy Dowling. Now, I have absolutely no idea who's coming next week. So I'm not going to give any hints. I'm not even going to suggest possibly who it could be because I really have no idea. I've bulk recorded a whole bunch of episodes and I'm still trying to work it all out. I've only just hit my Patreon goal to ramp it up to 2 episodes a week. So I am running manic at the moment, getting some episodes recorded and set up and ready to go. So lots of exciting chats coming, lots of great people in store, and I'm really looking forward to sharing them all with you. I think it's enough from me. So until next week, folks, take care and ta-ta.